the story on behalf of the girl. That morning, I saw dozens of police officers in our small yard. Some have just arrived, others left being substituted. Everything was surrounded by tape, and no one was allowed inside it. Although a huge number of gapers gathered, even though the yard wasn't large, as I've already said. It was early in the morning. I had just woken up for work, and the first thing I heard besides the nasty ringing of the alarm clock was a loud chatter outside the windows. And when I got out of bed and looked out the window, I realized that something had happened. The police cars were lined up in a row, with an ambulance between them, blocking the other cars from passing through our yard. There was neither the time nor the desire to run and find out what was there. It usually doesn't take me long to prepare for work. Well, relatively not long. It takes me about an hour to take a shower, make up, and have breakfast. Well, I've had 2 police visits in that hour. At first, they came wearing uniform, with weapons, and literally 10 minutes later came the others, dressed in civilian clothes. All they wanted to know was if I'd seen anything strange in the yard that night. My answer was short but obvious. Normal people sleep at night, not stare out the window. They weren't satisfied with my answer and asked another question. Whether I observed any suspicious people or a person in our yard, or perhaps in the entrance. It was obvious that something serious had happened, but no one could understand what it was.
No, I don't think so. The fact is that I am constantly at work, and I come home only in the late evening.
Just the previous evening. Did you see anyone suspicious?
Suspicious in what way?
After asking the question, I invited the plainclothes police officers to enter the apartment.
Perhaps in a mask, or maybe with some object in his hands, such as a knife, an iron rod, and so on.
No, I haven't seen anyone like this. Everything seems to be calm here.
I have to disagree with you.
Why? What happened?
A body was found at your door last night.
That's horrible.
I sobbed, backing away a little.
And who is the victim if it's not a secret?
Actually, that's the thing we can't yet understand. But all the traces lead to the 24th apartment.
Really?
I was surprised, and even a chill instantly slipped through my body.
Do you know who lived there?
I don't see much of my neighbors, but if I remember correctly, Uncle Tom lived there. Sorry, I don't know the last name. And what's the problem with identifying him? I don't understand.
I asked the police a question, simultaneously looking at my watch and realizing that I already had to rush to work.
This is not for the faint-hearted people.
One of them warned me.
I'm fine with that.
He was found without a face.
A chill crept over my skin once more, lifting the hair on my arms and legs.
What a nightmare.
Could you please repeat the name of the alleged tenant of apartment number 24?
Thomas. He was a man probably under 60 or something.
How do you know him?
I heard the old woman talk about him on the street, that he was constantly drinking, throwing rubbish in the entrance. Well, they called him by his first name, but in general he was a good man. He always helped me carry my bags home, or did some other hard work. But frankly speaking, he used to drink a lot. Where is his face?
In a half voice, I asked myself a question, but the policeman who wrote down everything I said in a notebook readily answered.
Most likely it was cut off.
After his words, I involuntarily imagined this scene and was horrified. It was the most horrible and disgusting thing I'd ever experienced before.
Well, thank you very much. Please tell me your full name.
I told the police everything they wanted, and together with them, dressed, left the apartment.
Miss Sophia, be careful. This is not the first case in your area. It is advisable not to go alone in the evening. Ask your boyfriend to meet you from work.
I don't have a boyfriend,
I said with a shrug.
Well, maybe someone from work will see you off.
You know, we have such men working that it will be safer to go alone.
I said, smiling.
In any case, be careful, and preferably don't open the door to anyone, especially in the evening.
All right, I'll keep in mind. Thank you.
The policeman said nothing in response and went to interview other residents of our entrance. That's too much for one morning. A horror. I left the entrance and as quickly as possible ran in the direction of the bus stop, and then I went to work. That day passed suspiciously quickly. It seemed that it had just begun, and already it was getting dark. There was no time to think about the morning incident, and in general, to be honest, a huge press called work, and the boss knocked all thoughts about this situation out of my head. Only in the evening, when the working day was over, I remembered the words of the policeman and the whole situation itself. I felt a little uneasy when I found myself alone in the dark, unlighted yard next to ours. At our house, there was at least a lamppost, the light from which at least a little covered the territory. But here it was pitch dark. The houses were very close to each other, forming a dark maze, so that it became darker than the darkest night. Only the light from the windows helped me to orient myself, at least a little. Fortunately, in this darkness, I didn't run into anyone suspicious and safely entered my yard. It was quiet here. I didn't notice anyone suspicious, and I didn't notice anyone at all. The yard was empty. Strange and unpleasant thoughts crept into my head about life and death, about a dead neighbor. You know how it happens. Someone dies and you keep thinking that life is a strange thing. It would seem that yesterday I saw a person alive, and the next day he dies. You'll never see him again. Even though I wasn't particularly familiar with him, but still the death of any person is very bad, especially such a terrible one. I went into the apartment. The first thing I really wanted to do was take a shower, so I did. After putting the kettle on the stove, in the shower, one unpleasant thing broke my plans. As soon as I came in, I could smell the sickening stink of sewage. And in the shower stall itself, I found a small puddle with some black lumps, hair and other abominations. Grimacing and plugging my nose, I began to clean the pipe with a plunger. The pipes here are as old as mammoth feces, and sometimes this happens, although it didn't happen for a very long time. Oh, if I had known then that this would all begin, this same evening I would have packed up all my things and left as far as possible from this damned house and the same yard. But at that time I took it for an ordinary blockage and easily coped with it with the help of a plunger. As soon as I got out of the shower and turned on the hairdryer, the doorbell rang and I automatically looked at the clock. It was 10 p.m.
Strange. I wasn't expecting anyone,
I said out loud, and peeked through the peephole, thinking that the police were there again. But no, I was wrong. And there was a man standing on the landing. Only when I saw him through the peephole did I recognize another neighbor. This one lived on the floor above, just above me. Even through the closed door, I could hear him saying something about pipes. I opened the door. There was a man, 50 or 60 years old. In our entrance there were very few young people left. Only their parents lived there.
Good evening. Excuse me for such a late visit.
The neighbor was talking very polite.
There's a huge problem with those pipes. I can't shower normally.
It's okay.
I said,
I have the same thing.
and I noticed a cable in his hand, the same one with which they get rid of blockages.
From my apartment, the cable doesn't reach. The blockage is apparently further. May I try to break it from your apartment? Maybe it will work?
Yes, come on in, of course.
The man went into the apartment, and after wiping his feet, went to the bathroom.
Do you need my help?
I asked casually.
No, thank you. I'll do it quickly. I hope I won't disturb you.
Good.
He went into the bathroom and closed the door behind him. I heard the whistle of the kettle and ran to the kitchen. Well, I think I should treat the neighbor with a cup of tea. After that, I started preparing for bed and for the next working day, but then I decided to check what he was doing there. I went into the bathroom and saw him trying to turn the cable in the drain.
Can I help you with something?
No, you can't.
The neighbor answered abruptly, as if being scared.
Excuse me, is something wrong?
It seemed as if he had changed. He turned to me and got to his feet. I couldn't help but think of the cops, and the way he looked at me made me feel scared. His eyes darting in all directions, and he was shaking as if he'd just come out of the freezer. I started to back away, but the man spoke.
Daughter, listen to me carefully.
He was extremely scared. Coming out of the bathroom, he began to cross himself, and he did without stopping. I don't know how he could do that so fast.
What is happening? Can you explain to me or not?
We have an evil spirit in our house.
In half a voice, he almost whispered,
What makes you think that?
thinking that the man probably drank too much. I asked. But no, he was sober, and not even the slightest smell came from him, which was extremely surprising to me. He tried to calm down and tried to take my hand. We went into the kitchen and started talking. He was telling things that made my wet hair stand on end.
Sophia, you saw Tom found today at the entrance with his face cut off, didn't you?
I haven't seen him, but I heard about it. The police came to me, warned that something strange is happening in the vicinity.
They are absolutely right. It's been happening for a long time.
Gasping for air, the man repeated,
Here, drink some tea and calm down.
It's impossible to calm down in this situation.
Tell me everything from the very beginning.
I leaned on him. He even seemed to calm down a little and continued.
Something is living now in our house. Where did it come from? What is it? I don't know. Until today, I always found notes in my apartment, in my pocket, in the closet, on the kitchen table, on an ordinary notebook sheet.
What kind of notes?
There, someone wrote about taking my face.
After this sentence, I felt as if I had swallowed a stone. The heaviness in my stomach made me feel dizzy, but I still stood and remained sane, although there was a tremor in my hands and a slight chatter in my teeth.
I don't know who wrote them. I have no idea how they got to me. I live alone. I haven't had anyone else at home for a month or more. My children live in another country. At first there was only one note, then 2, 3, and so on incrementally, until there were quite a lot of them. Here, look, I'll show you.
He took out a lot of crumpled pieces of paper from his pocket and dumped them on the table, unfolding each of them in turn. Each of them was written on, either in mud or some kind of ink.
I'll take your face. You see? But that's not all.
He looked like a madman when he did all this. He unfolded pieces of paper, proved to me that it was some kind of devilry, and so on. But then he said the following.
And this morning I went to the bathroom to wash my face, and I saw there on the rope, where the curtain is, hanging Tom's face. Blood dripped into the tub. It flowed down the drain, and from there it sounded like someone was sucking up that blood.
His story made my heart beat even more clearly.
And why didn't you tell the police?
They would never believe me. They would have taken me to prison right away.
And I was sitting and wondering if he could do it. Well, he actually looked like a mentally ill, deranged person right now. Realizing this, I began to politely escort him to the door, while simultaneously dialing the police number.
Fool! I came to warn you. Well, you can call. Call whoever you want. I have already outlived my time. Because he is in the pipes in there. I wanted to help you. He tried to get into my head, but his words seemed nonsense to me.
I actually thought that the man just went crazy and killed his neighbor. But here it wasn't so simple. I shooed him out of the door and called the police. It was creepy to realize that you just had a crazy psychopath in your apartment who was cutting off faces and saying that it wasn't him who was doing this, but someone from the sewer. Then came the night, the most eerie and most inexplicable night of my life. The police arrived, and I heard quick footsteps in the entrance, but surprisingly, no one came to see me, even though I called for it myself.
Well, that's even better,
I thought, and lay down in the cold bed. Of course, after this, I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. I tossed and turned, listened to the constant footsteps and conversations in the entrance, but still, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning when everything calmed down. The fatigue of the day took its toll, and my eyes closed, and I dozed off. In the middle of the night, or rather closer to the morning, I opened my eyes wide, staring at the ceiling and listening to the silence, which was actually broken by the sounds coming from the bathroom. I was in a state that I can't even describe. I suddenly felt cold. The blanket that had been heated all night no longer warmed me, and every inch of my skin was covered with goosebumps. The sound from the bathroom was similar to the sound when you drink your Coke to the bottom with a straw. Something similar was heard behind the door. I forced myself to get out of bed, and with small steps, I headed towards the bathroom. While I was walking, the whole last day flashed before my eyes. From morning to evening, all those policemen, the plumber, his story, notes, and so on. But I will never forget what I saw when I opened the door, turning on the light in the bathroom. I saw the same scene as my neighbor described. The skin of his face peeled off, or cut off, like a rubber mask, only covered in bloody fragments, was hanging from the curtain line. The entire bathroom was drenched in red liquid, and in the gutter, when I shone my flashlight into it, I saw kind of a mouth in this small hole. Something was moving there, making the same sounds I mentioned earlier, only now I could hear them much more clearly. Screeching, I ran out of the bathroom, put on the first thing that came to hand, grabbed a bag with documents, money, and a phone, and immediately left the apartment, without even closing the door. I ran as fast as I could, away from the yard, and away from the house. I barely got through to a friend who agreed to take me in for a while, and I came to her place in a nightgown, a coat, and slippers. Naturally, I told her everything, from the very beginning till the end, but I didn't mention only one thing, namely that when I ran out of the entrance, I heard someone moving in the sewer, and when I was already at a decent distance from our entrance, I clearly saw how the sewer hatch opened, and someone got out. He was already far away from me, but despite this, I was struck by the fact that he had terrible human faces stretched over his head like masks. That's what I remember the most, the sound of a hatch opening, and something crawling out. But the worst part of all of it was that next day, I received an email from an unknown account. "I'll take your face." Then I began to receive the same text messages on my phone. I still went to the police, hoping for at least some protection, told them about the neighbor's face hanging in my bathroom, about text and letters. The same 2 police officers who interviewed me in the morning 2 days ago were working on the case. They believed me, seeing how scared I was, and referring to the words of an already deceased neighbor. Even when I was at a friend's house, the letters were sent to my mail, and last night, I heard the same sound from my bathroom.